Welcome back to the Crypto World channel, everyone. My name is Josh, and right now, Bitcoin is bouncing from this massive area of support as the stock market is now confirming an oversold signal on the weekly time frame. And the last time this happened, we did see a decent bounce in the coming weeks. So I'll be talking about that in just a moment, alongside the fact that the Federal Reserve just had an emergency closed board meeting in regards to potentially interest rate cuts, which I'll talk about in just a moment, alongside Ethereum running into significant support, while the price of Solana is flashing a new signal in the short term. The price of XRP is now bouncing from this important line of support, and the price of Chainlink is also bouncing from this exact line of support that I've been talking about for a long time now on the channel. So I'll be talking about all of that and more later in the video, so definitely watch to the end. First of all, just before we take a look at the Bitcoin and crypto charts today, and before even taking a look at the US stock market today, taking a quick look at some news that's happened over the last few days, in fact, a matter of hours ago. First of all, leading up to this news, of course, Donald Trump has been pressuring the Federal Reserve to cut interest rates. And in case you're new to all of this, all you really need to know when it comes to cutting interest rates or stimulating the economy from the Federal Reserve, basically, that is all very bullish for financial markets. And on the other hand, when the Federal Reserve raises interest rates or performs quantitative tightening, basically pulling money away from the economy, that is bearish for markets. And so obviously with the entire trade war happening at the moment and tariffs, of course, recently that's been dumping markets. So this is why Trump is trying to basically get the Federal Reserve to cut interest rates. But what's very interesting is just over this last one day here, the Federal Reserve has just officially announced a closed board meeting. And usually these emergency Fed meetings right here don't happen too often. Usually we only end up seeing the FOMC meeting, the usual Fed meetings, which happen every roughly 1 month or 1.5 months apart. But basically the last few times we've seen these sort of closed board meetings basically just come out of nowhere, sort of emergency meetings, have usually been around market bottoms, give or take, basically when a lot of things are going on in the market. And so we did actually see something similar to this near the bottom of the March 2020 crash, obviously when the pandemic first hit and markets went straight towards the downside. We saw the Federal Reserve hold an emergency meeting and cut interest rates massively, which basically bottomed the market and shot the stock market straight back up again. And we actually saw something similar all the way back in around 2009, basically with the 2008 global financial crisis. We saw basically the Federal Reserve come together in an emergency meeting and start quantitative easing and cutting interest rates, which pumped the markets. And so once again, in case you're new to all of this, you have to understand that the Federal Reserve is one of the most powerful institutions on planet Earth. And basically whatever the Federal Reserve says, markets basically follow what the Federal Reserve says. And so at least at the time of recording this video, we don't know the exact outcome of this closed board meeting, but the simple fact that it is happening shows that the Federal Reserve is potentially considering maybe something like rate cuts. That's just a speculation, once again, not confirmed, but this is obviously happening right now, and these sort of meetings do not often happen in terms of these closed board meetings. And with that being said, if we're taking a look at the US stock market on the daily time frame, this is the S&P 500 index. And first of all, we could see at the end of the last trading week, especially on Thursday and Friday, we saw a massive drop off, some of the worst days in recent history for the US stock market. And of course, that was following the tariff announcements that happened right at the beginning of that massive drop off right here. But here on Monday, we did first of all open much lower than Friday's close. And then we initially saw a dump further in the stock market before actually seeing a bit of a bounce in the stock market and ultimately closing green compared to the open right here, but still actually closing just below Friday's close based on the S&P 500 index on the daily time frame. And so obviously the fact that we saw a bit of a bounce in the short term in the US stock market is at least some good news. It's a bit of a relief from what we saw on especially Thursday and Friday. And once again, potentially one of the reasons as to why we saw a short-term bounce here in the US stock market on the Monday trading day here is potentially due to the fact that we saw that Federal Reserve announcement of the closed board meeting, basically an emergency Fed meeting. And if we're zooming out on the US stock market, we're taking a look at the NASDAQ 100 index on the weekly time frame. Obviously, as I said around a month ago now on the channel, channel many weeks ago before all of this latest drop off right here. Obviously, we confirmed a bear market signal in the weekly RSI for the Nasdaq 100 index. And once again, I said this is a bear market signal, a massive warning signal pointing towards more bearish price action. I said that around a month ago now on the channel. You can even go back and watch. But what is now happening today is indeed an oversold signal here in the weekly RSI for the Nasdaq 100 index. And the last time we confirmed an oversold signal for the Nasdaq 100 index on the weekly time frame was around May 2022. And what came next was at least a bit of a short-term bounce. Now, that wasn't necessarily the bottom, but we did see a bit of a relief following that oversold signal. And so honestly, I would not be surprised if the rest of this week, or maybe in the next few weeks, we potentially see a bit of a break, just a bit of a relief from all of this drop off right here, potentially once again, just in the somewhat shorter term relative to this time frame. But as I always say, an oversold signal does not guarantee we've hit the bottom and we're never going to go lower. It does not mean that. It just means potentially a bit of a relief is about to happen here in the short term, just like how an overbought signal does not necessarily mean we've hit the top forever. It just means we're running out of room towards the upside in the shorter term, and we're due to see a bit of a cool off. But talking about the bull market versus bear market, once again, we already confirmed the bear market signal in the RSI, and technically speaking, we're still currently within a stock market bear market. If we're measuring, for example, from high to low, we've dropped around 25 to 26%, and from high to the current price, as of recording this video, is still around 21% towards the downside, which is exceeding the technical definition of a bear market for the stock market. And if we're taking a look at this previous bear market that we saw in 2022, we can see that pretty much for the entire bear market, the RSI on the weekly time frame stayed below the center line, for the most part below the center line and below this area in the RSI, in between around 45 to 55. In fact, we used that area in the RSI multiple times as resistance throughout the bear market. We struggled to break above that area until finally the bear market was over. Once we saw a breakout back above this area right here, above around 55 in particular in the weekly RSI, that was the first signal telling us the bear market is over. And so obviously we're still a long way from potentially confirming the end of this bear market right here. So once again, as I said, we're due to see a bit of a short-term relief now that we've hit that oversold signal, but not necessarily confirming the complete end of the bear market, at least not yet. And so that is the current situation for the US stock market. I do expect once again a short-term relief, but we have not confirmed the end of the bear market. So that is what I'm expecting right now. And as usual, the crypto market is highly correlated to the stock market, which is why I'm covering the stock market here on this crypto channel, because usually if stocks are bearish, often that's going to be bearish for crypto, and vice versa. If the stock market's in a bull market, usually Bitcoin and crypto is going to be in a bull market, like for example in 2023 and 2024. And with that being said, if we're taking a look at the Bitcoin price charts today on the 4-day time frame, the super trend indicator is still sitting in the red, so nothing's changed on this chart over the last 1 day. And if we're taking a look at this weekly Bitcoin chart, obviously the weekly Bitcoin MACD, at least for now, is looking more bearish than it is bullish. We're still a long way from potentially confirming a new bullish crossover. But like I've said in recent weeks here on the channel, we've basically slowed down the amount of bearish momentum, which means we're obviously not looking as bearish as what we were looking like around a month ago, give or take, near the beginning of March, end of February, around there. Obviously, we're seeing a lot more bearish momentum. And so in recent weeks here on the channel, just over the last couple of weeks, give or take, I've been comparing this stage in the market right now, especially for Bitcoin in particular, compared to basically what we were seeing around here, mainly around July to August in particular for the price of Bitcoin, July to August last year. And so obviously at that point right there, we did not flip massively bullish again straight away. We ultimately played out a few more months before we finally flipped a little bit more bullish again. But obviously by that point right there, we had already seen a lot of the bearish price action already play out. And with that being said, if we're taking a look at this weekly Bitcoin chart, of course, we still have a significant bearish divergence to pay attention to, as I've been warning about since pretty much the beginning of this year. And so once again, this tells us to not expect any significant bullish momentum anytime soon. So of course, we can see some short-term bounces here and there, some short-term bullish price action and things like that. Just don't necessarily expect massive momentum towards the upside here on the larger time frames, at least anytime soon. And just before taking a look at some other very important Bitcoin price charts today, first, if you want to trade any of these moves in the price of Bitcoin or any other crypto, obviously you have to be set up ready to go on a crypto exchange. And personally, I'm taking a lot of my crypto trades over on 2bit, so I'll make sure to leave a link to 2bit below this video in the description and in the pinned comment. And if you use that link, it'll take you to this page right here where you can claim some massive trading bonuses, like for example, up to $50,000 in a trading bonus. Or if you're not one of these larger traders, you can get a $30 sign up bonus just by making an account using that link, and also up to a 20% deposit rebate with a max of 200 USDT. So for example, if you deposit $1,000, you get a $200 bonus, but only if you use that link. And on top of all of that, if you use the link below this video to 2bit, you're automatically upgraded to VIP level 1 trading fees, which basically means you get a massive discount on trading fees, but once again, only if you use the link below this video. So if you're going to be trading crypto anyway, you might as well check this out. Once again, first link below this video. And in case you're wondering, 2bit is a no KYC exchange, which means you can access it from basically any country in the world without needing any KYC. But as always, check your local regulations when it comes to trading crypto. And for whatever reason, if you don't want 2bit as an exchange, there's also BTNex as another option out there, another exchange that I also trade on. So I'll also make sure to leave a link to BTNex below this video. And by the way, if you use the link below this video to BTNex, you can get a massive lifetime 10% discount on all trading fees. And that massive fee discount lasts forever on your BTNex account, but only if you use that link. And once again, BTNex is also a no KYC exchange. But with that being said, taking a look at this 3-day Bitcoin price chart, and over the last few days, obviously we saw a continued rejection from this previous area of resistance in between around 86,000 to 88,000. So for now, that is still acting as strong resistance. And obviously, as we continued that rejection from that exact area of resistance, we've come down to almost this exact area of support, this significant support that I've been talking about for months now on the channel, sitting in between around 70,000 to 74,000. And if we're looking at where the price of Bitcoin bounced from, it was just a few $100s away from 74,000. It was in the 74K area, in between 74 to 75K. And so, like I've been saying this entire time, expect a lot of demand, a lot of buyers looking to buy up Bitcoin around that area, starting at close to 74,000 once again. And obviously, as soon as we got close to that 74K level, just a few $100s away from 74K, that's exactly where a lot of buyers stepped in, exactly as I've been talking about for a long time. And just to be fully transparent, yes, I did indeed accumulate a decent amount of Bitcoin around that area right there, in between around 74 to 75,000, just on the spot market, just long-term Bitcoin holdings. And personally, at least for now, I'm not actually accumulating altcoins. I'm just looking at potentially accumulating Bitcoin at these lower prices here. But as always, not financial advice. I'm just letting you know what I'm actually doing with my own money. And so that is the situation right now. We're currently forming a bit of a sideways price range in between this significant support and this significant resistance. And if we're taking a look at this daily time frame, obviously we still have this massive descending line of resistance, which is currently sitting at close to 84,000. And if we're zooming further into the short term, taking a look at the 4-hour Bitcoin price chart, obviously just like the US stock market, we continue to short-term drop, followed by now a short-term bounce in the price of Bitcoin, just like the US stock market. So once again, as I've been saying for many years now on the channel, the crypto market, especially Bitcoin, is highly correlated to what the US stock market is doing. So when a bunch of people out there telling you the decoupling's finally happening, well, I would not necessarily believe that. And so right now, the price of Bitcoin, as of recording this video and over the last one day, did first of all break below this short-term level of support, which was sitting at around 78,500. And like I said in my last video, if we break below 78,500, expect a further drop down towards close to 74,000, which is exactly what played out as I've been talking about. And now that we're seeing that bounce from very close to 74,000, obviously we've broken back above that short-term support right here, this previous support, which should now once again act as more support for the price of Bitcoin if we see another little pullback here. And as for short-term resistance, as I recording this video, the price of Bitcoin is contacting $80,000, which could possibly act as a bit of short-term resistance. But if this bounce continues beyond 80,000, expect the next resistance at roughly 81,500 to 81.6k, and above that level, expect more resistance at around 83,500 and 84,500. And of course, we have this descending line of resistance once again at close to 84,000 and major resistance closer towards around 88,000. And so at least for now, we still have a lot of resistance to pay attention to for the price of Bitcoin, but I do expect just a little bit of a relief here in the shorter term, potentially for the coming days, maybe even over the next few weeks, if the stock market plays out a bit of a relief over the next few weeks from this oversold signal on the weekly time frame that I talked about near the beginning of this video. And if we're taking a quick look at the Bitcoin liquidation heat map, looking at the last 6 months worth of price action, we can see that previously we had a lot of liquidity building at very close to 74,000, and basically the price of Bitcoin for months now has been moving towards that significant liquidity at close to 74,000, and right now we've pretty much just hit that liquidity. And in case you're new to all of this, usually, not always, but usually the price of Bitcoin tends to move towards where there's a lot of liquidity. So that's potentially one of the reasons, one of the many reasons as to why we saw some bearish price action recently in the price of Bitcoin towards this liquidity at close to 74,000. But it is worth pointing out that we actually have more liquidity building at around 64,000. So keep that in mind. But obviously, we cannot rely everything just on one chart. We need to take a look at multiple factors to figure out what is most likely going to happen for the price of Bitcoin. And so considering the fact that there is massive support in that lower 70k area, especially starting at close to 74,000, which is pretty much where we bounced from, obviously I'd not necessarily expect to move straight away down towards around 64 to 65k, while we're still finding a lot of support at above 70,000. And once again, just to reiterate, like I said in the beginning of the video, with the stock market flashing this oversold signal and actually confirming this oversold signal on the weekly time frame, due to the fact that we've seen that, obviously we're likely going to see a bit of a relief in the somewhat shorter term in the coming weeks. And with that being said, if we're taking a look at Ethereum on the weekly time frame, right now the price of ETH is technically still within a larger bear market similar to the stock market, but we have run into significant support sitting in between around 1.4k to 1550, so roughly around 1,500. As I've been saying for a long time now on the channel, for months now on the channel, I've been talking about 1,500 as the next significant support in this bear market, and at least so far that's pretty much exactly where the price is currently bouncing from. And once again, if Bitcoin plays out a bit of a relief, if the stock market plays out a bit of a relief, we could potentially see a bit of a short-term relief in the coming days or weeks in the price of ETH as we're bouncing from major support, but not necessarily reversing or ending the bear market. And so, for example, just like how during this previous bull market, we saw many examples where we had large corrections or short-term pullbacks and things like that along the way up during the bull market, it's very much possible we could see a bit of a bullish relief in the shorter term during a larger bear market. So just keep that in mind. And with that being said, if we're taking a look at this 3-day time frame, obviously, once again, we ran into that support at close to 1,500, and so far we're currently bouncing from that support as I've been talking about. And as for resistance, I would expect a lot of resistance at just below 1.9k if we can actually get back up there. First of all, once again, a lot of resistance around there. And if we're taking a look at the price of Solana, because honestly there's not much else happening for Ethereum, so getting straight into the price of Solana on the weekly time frame, right now we have just confirmed a weekly candle close below this very important area of support in between around 120 to 130. And so obviously this is simply a bearish signal for Solana. This is not good news for Solana, technically further confirming the price target at around $90. And as I've recorded this video, we've already made it down towards around $95 to $96. So we've already gotten very close to the complete technical price target for this massive rising wedge. And obviously, if you've been watching my videos over the last few months, you'd know that I've been talking about these $90 prices since the price was at around 170. And I remember a lot of people on the channel back then were telling me there's no way the price of Solana could possibly go below $100 ever again when the price was back at 170. But obviously now the price has indeed done that, as I've been warning about for months. And I now expect significant previous support to become significant new resistance for the price of Solana. So expect a lot of resistance in between 120 to 130. If we actually make it back up there once again, expect a lot of resistance. And if we're taking a look at this daily time frame, there is possibly some short-term hope for Solana with a new bullish divergence confirming, well, actually flashing, but almost confirming here on the daily time frame. Technically, it still needs to be confirmed with at least this daily candle close, but ideally a couple of candle closes in the green to actually cement a higher low in place in the daily Solana RSI. And obviously, as I always say, Solana, along with a lot of the altcoins out there, are highly correlated to what Bitcoin is doing, and by extension, very correlated to what the stock market's doing. So if stocks and Bitcoin play out a bit of a relief in the coming days or weeks, expect something similar for Solana that can really help confirm the bullish divergence on the daily time frame. But remember, that's not necessarily going to reverse the larger situation here on the larger time frames. And so that is what I'm currently watching out for the price of Solana in terms of major price targets, resistance, and short-term influences on the price. And if we're taking a look at XRP on the 3-day time frame, obviously, at least for now, this massive bearish divergence is still actively playing out, as I've been saying for months now on the channel, since much higher prices. And so obviously not much has changed on this chart right here over the last one day. And if we're taking a look at the 12-hour time frame, we can see the price of XRP has clearly been trending within a short-term bearish trend, a descending parallel channel. And right now, the support line for this descending parallel channel is sitting at approximately $1.75. So that is the support to pay attention to. And as for resistance for the parallel channel, that's sitting at around $2.66 approximately. And the center line, which is also acting as a bit of short-term resistance, is currently sitting at around $2.15. But once again, despite seeing short-term bounces here and there, technically speaking, the trend for XRP is still currently bearish. That's simply the trend. Unfortunately, we are currently bearish. But if we're taking a look at this weekly time frame, we pretty much perfectly bounced from this 78.6% Fibonacci level based on a previous Fibonacci level of resistance flipping into new support, and that's sitting at around very close to $1.60. And so based on this chart right here, looking at major support and resistance levels, once again, we have significant support at close to $1.60. But if we were to break below $1.60, in that situation, we could potentially drop down towards around $1.30 to $1.40. So in that $1.30 area, that's the next major area of support below $1.60. And as of right now, we'll likely find a decent amount of resistance at close to $2. And of course, we have significant resistance all the way up here at close to $3. And if we're taking a look at the shorter term, looking at the 8-hour XRP chart, obviously just recently we broke below that short-term area of support, which was sitting in between $1.95 to $2.05. And right now, as of recording this video, we're currently retesting that previous support to possibly flip it into new resistance. Usually when we break support, it flips into new resistance. So expect some resistance in that area at roughly $2, give or take. But if we can finally see a confirmed breakout with candle closes confirming back above around $2.05, in that situation, we'll have more resistance once again at close to $2.15 and more resistance in between $2.24 to $2.30. And if we're taking a look at the price of Chainlink on the daily time frame, we can see obviously over the last couple of days, we broke below this Fibonacci level of support, which was sitting at around $12.70 to $12.80. And like I've said for many weeks now on the channel, I've said once we break below around $12.70 to $12.80, expect a quick move down towards $10 and then expect support, expect a bounce from around $10. And obviously just recently, that's precisely what has happened. In fact, if we're looking at where the price of Chainlink bounced from, it was just a matter of cents. It was a couple of cents away from $10. So pretty much that exact support that I've been talking about for many weeks now on the channel, when everyone was telling me there's no way we could possibly hit $10 for Chainlink ever again. But obviously that's now happened. And what's also just happened over the last one day is potentially a new bullish divergence currently flashing for the price of Chainlink on the daily time frame, but technically still needs to be confirmed. I want to make this clear, at least as of right now, it's not currently confirmed, but we do obviously have lower lows already confirmed in the price in the candle closes here, and higher lows, of course, currently forming in the daily Chainlink RSI. And so all we need to see is potentially one, but ideally a couple of candle closes confirming in the green in the price in order to actually cement a solid bounce in place in the RSI, just like that. And once we see that initial confirmation, potentially in the next few days or so, that would confirm the bullish divergence, telling us we could likely see a short-term relief, maybe for just a couple of weeks, give or take. But technically speaking, when it comes to the larger trend, even if we confirm this bullish divergence and play out a short-term relief, the larger trend, at least for now, is still currently bearish. We're still forming lower highs, lower lows, breaking below support levels, failing to get back above resistance levels, which is all bearish price structure. And as for resistance, I'll now expect these previous Fibonacci levels of support to flip into new resistance, just like this golden pocket did at close to $15 to $15.50. And of course, I'll now expect that $12.70 to $12.80 level to flip into new resistance as well. And once again, if you want to trade any of these moves in the price of any crypto, check out the links below this video to those exchanges if you want to claim those massive bonuses that are only available using those links. And if you want to actually know how to trade crypto, no matter what the price is doing, whether the price is bullish, bearish, or chopping around sideways, you can profit from all of that price action by watching these videos popping up right here on your screen. The video in the top left shows you how you can profit from bullish or bearish price action using long positions or short positions, and the video in the bottom left shows you how you can easily profit from choppy sideways price action. But anyway, that is everything that I have to say for today. I really hope you enjoyed, and I'll see you all in the next video.